So there's a few things I think it's important we all understand, and there's a variety of different rules. This is intended to be a town hall meeting, and I will be the facilitator for a few of the groups, but not all of them. Just like Scott said, there are a variety of facilitators today to host the various different offices. And so the first group that we are going to be hosting this morning is we are going to be having our CD1 candidates. So let me make sure we've got this right. Yep, CD1, so Congressional District Number 1 candidates. We'll have them come out in just a moment. The process is going to be a little different than perhaps what you're used to. If you're from the area, from the city of Maricopa, you're probably used to a little more stagnant sort of question and answer. We want a lot of participation and encouragement from you all, and so we have microphones up here for questions. There will be other questions that are asked. We have social media running right now. There's a live feed, and so we'll be having questions come through the live feed at social media, but we really want this to be interactive. The other side to remember, though, today, while there are Republicans and Democrats and independents and just about any other party you can think of who might be running for a given office, one of the things that is different is that because this is the primary, we want to encourage dialogue between the candidates, but not between the different parties, because this is the primary. In the general, we will see that when we do this again, or InMaricopa does this again, that when they host the next town hall, then it will be between the different party candidates as who has gone through the primary system. But that is the way this will take place. We have three major rules here for the moderators, and those rules are to make sure that the candidates stay respectful. So be respectful, be succinct, and try not to repeat yourself. So I'll do my best to make sure that they stay on target. And then, of course, staying on topic, right? That's what the purpose is here today. We'd all like to see people answer the question. So again, while we want to give them the leeway to answer, there's not a time frame. I don't think they can go on for 50 minutes, but at the same time, they should be able to answer the question. They will not be timed. The only timing that will occur today is that each candidate, if they are in a contested race, will have the ability to make an opening statement. That opening statement will last 60 seconds. They will also have the opportunity to make a closing statement right before the end, after I call the time, and that will be 90 seconds. So each candidate will have the opportunity for 90 seconds to give a closing statement. So again, be respectful, be succinct, don't repeat yourself, and to please stay on topic. So with that, without any further ado, we will get moving on this, and so we'd like to please have our CD1 candidates please come forward, and we'll introduce them as they come. Please come out. Perfect. Okay, so with that, I'd like to have each of you spend 60 seconds introducing yourself to the crowd and let us know who you are, what you stand for, and we'll give you 60 seconds each. So we'll start with Senator Steve Smith and go to Representative Shedd.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and welcome everybody. I always start off by saying this is a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. It's a great day. Thanks for taking the time out of your Saturday to come down here. My name is Steve Smith. I've served as your senator since 2010 in this area. It's been an honor. My wife and I and our 5 children live right here in Maricopa. We're part of the community, and it's been an honor to serve in the Senate. In my time in the Senate, I've been ranked the #1 conservative legislator, the #1 legislator dealing with our Second Amendment rights for our police, military, small business owners, named champion of the taxpayer, and so on. Just because I do the work that I think we as in our community is expecting our elected officials to do. And that's what I've been doing. Of course, now we're running for Congress in District 1, which is where we live. It's a very, 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 very big district. It's almost just north of Tucson to the Four Corners, so it's a massive district. But I want to say it's been very much a humbling and very, very much so an honor to serve you in this community since 2010, and I look forward to doing so in Congress. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. Ms. Shedd.
Figure out the microphone. Hey, hello, my name is Tiffany Shedd. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives for this district. I have lived in the district since I was 7. I'm a farmer, 4th generation farmer, cotton and wheat in Eloy. I'm a mother of 3. I am an attorney, graduated from the University of Arizona, and I decided to run because I have been on the side of being frustrated with government, and also because I'm frustrated with the anger in government where we don't accomplish anything. And those of us who live in rural Arizona are the ones paying for it. And so I want to be a voice for rural Arizona. My family lives in this district. Everything I own is in this district. My heart is in this district. I graduated from Casa Grande Union High School. And I would also just really like to compliment the people who put this on for including our high school youth. That can be a really big deal. I remember one time in high school, we had a congressman come, and I became his intern because someone decided to include us. So thank you very much, and thanks for spending your Saturday here.
Thank you very much. So I think before we start getting to questions, and again, this is very interactive. We want you all to ask questions, okay? There's a microphone up here, and Raquel is right here to assist with, forming of a line or however she prefers to do it. But we encourage you to come forward and ask questions. I do want to point out that in this particular race, while of course there are Republicans and Democrats running for this office, on the stage today are two of the Republicans in the primary. And so we would encourage you to be able to converse back and forth and answer each other as you answer questions. We encourage the audience to ask questions of them individually and or collectively. As we get to other races where we perhaps have more candidates, then we will target those questions specifically towards Republicans or Democrats. And then, again, you can ask the questions of both, but that's how we encourage it to be, so that the dialogue is between the primaries and the given parties. So with that, we'll open the time up in the microphone here to ask the first questions. Again, this is coming from you all, so we encourage you to ask the questions that are important to you. Please, sir.
My question is for both of them to answer. Setting aside all the button hotspot issues of the day, what is your feelings, your belief about the proper role of government in our lives, and why do you believe that way? And have you ever had a paradigm shift in that belief, and why did you have that shift?
So we'll go ahead and start. Let's start with Ms. Shedd this time, and then we'll just kind of go through.
Well, I've always believed in less government, and I've actually never had a paradigm shift, although life experience has actually proven that to be true. I came up in high school during the Reagan years, and I'm a huge fan of Reagan. And I think that the role government has, especially when we're talking about the federal government, is we do have a constitution, and we do have a 9th and a 10th Amendment, which also underline enumerated powers. We are the only country on earth that we do not get our rights from the government. We are given God-given rights, and our government is given authority by the people. That's a major difference from any other government in the world, and I think sometimes we forget that. I think that, just like the Constitution, there's things the federal government has been given the job to do because states can't do it on their own. We can't do a military, we can't do foreign treaties, etc. And so I really believe the role of government is to provide freedom, to make sure we maintain those freedoms so that people can have a chance in this country to achieve whatever they're gifted to do, whatever they're willing to work hard at, and that is the greatest gift that we are ever given, is that we have a chance in the United States. We're not a socialist country where everyone is equally miserable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And so I can kind of answer it this way too. When I got elected in 2010 to the state Senate, Arizona was left billions of dollars in debt. Our economy was in the toilet. I think we were ranked 49th in the nation in job growth. And so government elected officials had to come in to the very small role that government should be playing and actually help turn around our economy, turn around our system. We're seeing our president do the same thing today. And what we did, funny thing, we actually did what people talk about doing. We actually went in and actually cut taxes and cut business regulations and made it an easier environment for companies and businesses to thrive in, and individuals and small business owners. And so what we did with government in the state level, we said, we're not going to be this overbearing government. We're going to pull back. We're going to put in where the government is necessary and needed in setting policy like that. And we did it. And would you believe we went from 49th in the nation in job growth to 4th? And many scorecards had us at number 1, too. Forbes had us at number 1 for future growth and others. And so what I'm saying is those policies actually work. And when you have a government that's targeted, that's supposed to do a limited role that the government is supposed to be doing, and especially in terms of economic output, make a conducive atmosphere for businesses and individuals to thrive, and then step back and walk away. That's exactly what we did in Arizona. And now to this day in Arizona, we have a structurally balanced budget, which we didn't have before. We have a rainy day fund, which was depleted before. And again, our Moody's rating went up and our credit rating went up. Arizona is one of the best destinations in the world now to come for people for jobs. So that's the role I think government should have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So before we move to another question from the audience, we have a question that Autumn is hosting here in the back. Autumn is our social media specialist, and we have a question via social media. So Autumn, please, you ask the question.
Thank you. Mary Grace on Facebook Live said, my question to these candidates is, what do you plan to do to advocate for public education and increase funding to ensure all schools get adequate funding to raise the bar and offer equal opportunities for all students?
Thank you. Senator?
Thank you for that question, and I serve on the Education Committee in the Senate. My wife is a teacher, my brother and sister are teachers, and so, and we have 5 young children, and half of them are in our public school system now, so education is very important to me, and I think it's highlighted what we just saw this past session, this past year in Arizona with the Red for Ed movement. Certainly the Governor Ducey, came out and gave them the 20% pay raise they asked for. I supported it. Matter of fact, I serve on the Appropriations Committee where the bill came in first. And if it doesn't get out of that committee, it doesn't even go for a vote on the floor. And some members of the media asked me, well, Steve, how are you going to vote for it? And I said, well, I won't vote for a budget unless it has that pay raise in there. I know how hard our teachers work, and so we want to make sure we supply that for them. Not only that, we also had about over $500 million, over $500 million of what's called additional assistance for our schools. So if the air conditioning breaks, if the bus breaks down, if there's not enough textbooks, we had a whole separate pile of money in there to help pay for those things. And the last thing that we heard was we want to go back to the 2008 funding levels for our schools. That was the record high, and that's what we were asked to do. And so in 2 years, we're going to be there to the tune of about $337 million per year of additional assistance only, not counting the teacher pay raise. So to answer your question, we've done in Arizona. Federally, the Department of Education, I think, and I've always advocated for, our Arizonans need to have Arizonan dollars. Our dollars need to be sent to us. Who knows education better in Arizona than Arizonans, and not bureaucrats in Washington? So I will continue to fight for that we get control over those dollars that are ours, and our state can spend them as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shedd.
I have a huge passion for education. My first degree is in elementary education. Before I went to law school, I taught bilingual kindergarten at Curiel Elementary School in Eloy, Arizona. My mom was a teacher her entire career. I've served on the Toltec Elementary School Board. And, I don't know if this is because I am a teacher at heart, but I think that we really need to get to a point where we are treating our teachers with respect. These are people that have college degrees. It was not an easy degree. These are people that are handling our most important resource we have in our country, and that is our children. And if we do not show respect as a government or as grown-ups to our teachers, why do we think our children will show them respect in school? So let me just start with that premise. The other thing is I grew up going to Toltec school back in the day that the state of Arizona did not control school funding, and the federal government had much less control of our local school districts. Toltec Elementary School, during that period of time, was the second highest scoring academic school in the nation. That's Toltec, Arizona, part of Eloy over there. We were not a wealthy school district, but what we did have was local control. We had a school board who was able to implement policies because their hands were not handcuffed by people that had no idea or care what's going on in our community in Washington, D.C., and sometimes even the state legislature. Sometime after that, in order to equalize rural schools, the state of Arizona decided that all of our tax money goes to the state of Arizona and then is distributed. Seems to me that that didn't equalize rural Arizona schools. Seems that when I drive by the high schools and whatnot in Phoenix, they're much nicer than the ones we have in most of rural Arizona. And so I would advocate as a federal congressman that we need to decide what is the purpose of our schools. Is the purpose of a school to educate children, to do what they can do best in their life, whether that's vocational, whether that's college bound, whether that's just doing the best you can for our developmentally disabled. But, or is the federal government's role to make our schools a testing facility where we have extremely high administration levels now. Money is not getting into the classroom because of the amount of reporting our schools have to do, the amount of reporting our teachers have to do. And I know from being a classroom teacher, you don't want to spend until 10 o'clock filling out reports when the kids are brightest and you want to teach them to read and do math before after lunch when they're all a little bit less focused. So I think that, you know, we need to trim back the Department of Education. We need to return control to the people who actually love our kids. We need to have schools that reflect that perhaps people in mining communities want to learn welding or heavy equipment. We are building a society of only college bound, and the next generation's millionaires are going to be the plumbers and electricians. So I hope that helps and answers your question.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd.
If they come to you for money, they got to come to you first. And if you get there, you don't know what questions to ask, call me. Because I'm going to tell you this straight up, and I'm going to tell this, the rest of this audience. I will not caress their derriere. I'm tired of it. And there's a whole bunch of us veterans out here that are tired of it.
Thank you, Ed. Let me turn it to the candidates here to respond to that. So please, by all means, I think, whose turn is it first here? I think Ms. Shedd, I think it's your turn. Would like to respond, please?
I share your anger at what's happening to our veterans. I share your anger that anytime government takes over something, we no longer have patient, doctor-centered care. When we don't have a free market in something, this is what happens. People are not accountable. They don't have to compete in a market, and they don't have to take care of you. And I think that, you know, when we have the amount of bureaucracy that we have, especially with our veterans, especially in Medicare, my mom 2 years ago was on Medicare and passed away from ALS. And so I'm kind of familiar, I had to take care of her stuff, and the Medicare baloney, even for something as bad as Lou Gehrig's disease, was insane, and I wasn't even messing with the Veterans Administration as well. And so I think that that's one thing we need to go in and look at it as a business. You know, I'm a businesswoman. We do, in our business, if we are silly with our money and inefficient, we do not stay in business. And so we have gotten to the level where we pass more laws and add more red tape, and then those laws are perceived to even add more red tape by the agencies that are supposed to carry out those laws. You know, I think we need to re-examine systems and start passing laws that remove red tape. And, you know, I've seen it also in the environmental regulations. You know, and one thing President Trump did that kind of doesn't get a lot of play, and it also affects this, is for every regulation that a government agency, a federal agency passes, they now have to get rid of 2 and streamline. But we have gotten to the point where people literally die from lack of care because it's more important to maintain a bureaucracy than it is to take care of our seniors and our veterans according to these bureaucrats. And I will do everything in my power, as the power of the purse, to straighten that out. And additionally, on a case-by-case basis, there will not, you know, we are the ones passing the laws, should, you know, I become a congresswoman, and it's our job to make sure that those laws are being executed faithfully. And we see Congress pass laws and never look at it again, and you're right. I feel terribly sorry about that, and I will do everything in my power that that doesn't happen to others as well.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd. Senator?
Well, and so let me start with a story. I had a guy by the name of Sergeant Major Acosta and his team call me. He was in Afghanistan. He got blinded by a roadside bomb, lost his vision. And when he came home, he was 100% IU rated. So that basically just means you're effectively 100% disabled. Here's your little check from the government. Here's your jar of pills to sit on the couch and just go have a nice, happy rest of your life. Well, he's a young man, and he's talk about a dynamic speaker and passionate man. Well, he went out on almost like a speaking tour to talk about his service, to talk about just his life and everything. And for that, he made a lot of money. Do you know what happened to him? The IRS sent him a bill for $75,000. You know why? Because under the stupid federal law, he could basically only make about minimum wage being 100% IU disabled. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So a man that gave literally his eyes on the battlefield can't even go on and earn a living. So you know what I did? So it's a federal issue. We can't do it in Arizona. So I wrote, it was a 7-word change in our federal statute that would have allowed people like this to actually go and earn a living. The measly check they get from the government should be the crumbs that we say thank you for what you've done for us. You should be able to go earn a living. So I changed. It's 7 words. That's it. I hand-delivered those 7 words, and I rewrote the statute to every one of our Arizona congressmen and women. And that was 4 years ago, and none of them's done it since. And so I start with that because, number one, that's one of the first things I would do to stop that ridiculous layer of government, especially over our heroes. Second, when it comes to the VA, you're going to hear from Kelly Ward in a second. Kelly Ward and I served in the Senate together. Her and I actually picketed and protested out front of the Phoenix VA when vets were dying, and they weren't doing anything. And we went out there, and so and that happened, from what I recall, it was around this time of the year that the VA scandal broke a few years ago, because it was right around election time, and everybody running for office says, "Oh, I'm going to go fix the VA. I'm going to fix," and then nobody did it. It was, to me, it was an empty campaign promise. What I did, I was the chairman of the military committee in the Senate. 6, 7, 8 months later, after we got back in session, I called the acting director of the VA to stand in front of our committee and explain what the heck is going on. And of course, it was, oh, well, it wasn't me, it was the previous guy, and I'm on my way out, and this and that. But they had the whistleblower there they had without pay. They had so many problems there. And I guess my point is, when everybody else thought it was a campaign issue, I actually did something about it after the campaign. And I asked to be the chairman of the military committee. I received, about 3 months ago, the top award I've ever received. It's called the Copper Shield Award. It's given out through the Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame Society. They give it to one person a year for the person that does all what they think is the extraordinary work for vets. I always tell people, I didn't deserve it, I don't need it, but they gave it to me. Because nobody will fight harder for our vets and change simple laws like that. Bringing in the choice card fully, doing things like that Congress should be doing. And I'll end on this, Mayor. When we talk about health care for vets, they're about 1% of our population. They should have the best health care, and oftentimes they have the worst. And if you can't get the health care right for that 1% of the population that deserves the best, how the heck do you get it right for the other 99%? And that's why when you see this top-down, well, we want to institute national health care and all this, well, we can't even get it right for the best of us. How are we going to get it right for the rest? Start with the best. Make sure they have the care that they needed. They won't have a better advocate than me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Projects. Can you name any City of Maricopa, Pinal County CD1 projects that you will personally advocate and help us as local leaders be successful that maybe in your first 100 days?
Well, anybody who lives in Maricopa knows how bad the 347 is, right? Yeah? That literally, now we've been working on the state level for a long time. The problem is you have so many competing interests. You do have federal, you do have native, you do have city, you do have state. There's so many competing interests. What I would love to do and to deliver, because I live here too and I drive that road every day, is to absolutely widen and expand the 347. I want to thank the mayor and their leadership for doing the overpass in the city of Maricopa, for bringing that, that I think we'll have hopefully completed next year. But it's, living in rural Arizona, infrastructure is a big problem. And so when President Trump says, I want to pledge $1 trillion of revenue growth to infrastructure, I've got a list of what we need done. I-11 is another one of those highways that I think we can do. That's a federal government highway. That's going to be basically north to south, straight up through Arizona, ultimately one day from Mexico to Canada, I think some people view it as. But that's a massive trade corridor that if we can help bring that to fruition, well, I mean, Arizona is obviously in the driver's seat for, again, more trucking, more movement of goods, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to bolster our economy. And so I think 2 projects like that. One is a local project that I would love to see and absolutely advocate and fight for. But another one that is also a local project, but is a much grander project, is something like the I-11 that I think is vital for trade in Arizona.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Shedd.
Well, that's a big question, Supervisor Smith. This is a big district, and there's a lot of needs. The first one is I-10. I-10 needs to be widened. We need to work with the Gila River tribe to give them the off-ramps they need to do economic development in trade for the easements to widen I-10 between Casa Grande and Phoenix. And then another one that is dear to my heart, because it's not all about the South, is electrification of the Navajo Nation. 73% of the Navajo Nation does not have electricity. As you know, we will probably be losing the Navajo generating station soon. There is a proposal to keep 1 unit of the NGS in operation, which would then provide the electricity to the Navajo Nation. Without electricity, they can't do desalination of brackish water projects, they can't bring in industry. And we have a law on the books already, the Rural Electrification Law, and it was passed in the 1920s, 30s maybe, around that time. And basically, it allows rural electrical co-ops to be formed, and they borrow money at a very low rate, which is paid back from the U.S. Department of Treasury. We need a co-op up there in conjunction with the unit that could remain open on the NGS to build the infrastructure to provide for people that have no economic opportunity because of the lack of power and potable water. Without power, you do not have water. And so I think that, you know, that is just one. I also would try to amend the Davis-Bacon law. It's not really about what you eat for breakfast. What it is any project that the federal government gives funds to, let's say, the town of Maricopa, your costs, because of this labor law, when you do a federal project, pushes the cost of that project through the roof. So while it's extremely exciting to see maybe federal infrastructure money coming, what I worry is our rural towns don't have the matching funds. So if we have to, you know, just picking a percentage, if we have to do 40% of the cost and the feds do 60%, a project that costs $30 million now costs $100 million because of the federal regulations that come with it. And what I want is not just for Phoenix to get that money, but our rural communities as well. And that would allow a lot of projects like I-11, our turnoffs, Thornton Road in Casa Grande, it's up and down broadband to be put in. And so we really need to repeal these draconian laws that drive the cost of a project up once federal money touches it, so that our rural communities can have enough to grab onto some of that infrastructure money, and it doesn't just go to cities like Phoenix, New York City, Los Angeles.
Again, thank you, Ms. Shedd. Social media question, Autumn, please.
Chris Smith said on Facebook, Wendy Rogers was videotaped saying Social Security is unconstitutional and needs to be phased out. Do you agree with this statement?
Thank you. Ms. Shedd.
I absolutely do not agree with that statement, and I can give you the actual cite of the law why. We have a general welfare clause of the Constitution that allows anything that the states can't do for the federal government to do. With our mobile population, can you imagine if your retirement was in 50 different states? It's bad enough to just deal with federal Social Security. Second of all, this is not an entitlement. This is something that people have paid into their entire lives, and shame on Congress for not keeping that separate and spending it for whatever. When I have a... That is a savings account that they are supposed to hold in trust for the Americans who have paid into it. And to repeal that and to phase it out, especially for the people who no longer have the earning capacity, is unconscionable. And so I absolutely do not agree with that statement.
Thank you. Senator.
Yeah, thank you. And it's unfortunate Wendy Rogers isn't here today to defend that statement, because I completely disagree with it. I fought for seniors in our community for years in the legislature, and my mom and parents are retired, and the last thing I'm going to want to do is take the money that they and many of you have earned. Again, this is not a handout. This is money that was taken from you and was promised to give back to you. And that promise needs to be kept. Now, me on the other hand, you know, I get letters every couple years from the Social Security Fund. You know what they say? Steve, at this point, by the time you graduate, by the time you retire, you will earn 78% of your Social Securities. And then I get another check. Steve, 2 years later, when you retire, you will now get 75% of your benefit. I know my generation and people younger than me, we understand that it's severely and grossly insolvent. The Social Security system is all messed up. People, I guess, don't know how to balance a checkbook up there. And so what I would do is absolutely 100% advocate every senior or those approaching senior retirement absolutely needs to get what they deserve, what they paid for. And maybe for a younger generation, new people just starting to get into the workforce, at some point in time, we're gonna have to figure out, well, how do you make it solvent? And so you either have a balanced budget and you make it solvent, or you have to address, teenagers now who will soon start working at age 18. My first job was at 10 years old. I was a paper boy. Anybody ever paper route, right? My gosh, I don't think they exist anymore. But that's when I started working. And then I was a dishwasher, and then I worked at a pizza place. I've worked for everything I've ever had in my life. And the last thing I would want to do is for my federal government to tell me, yeah, all that money we were taking from you, yeah, you ain't gonna get it anymore. I think that's a joke. It's empty promises. It's exactly why people don't trust their government in many cases. I will certainly continue to advocate for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
I'm interested in the candidate's opinion on the issue of the downloadable plastic guns, the 3D printed ones. For someone who flies a lot and has lost friends at 9/11, this scares me a lot. And I've done work for the FAA, and they're telling me, their prototypes are $1 million plus for a replacement of an X-ray detector. And I'm just curious how you guys feel whether that should be allowable to have downloadable plastic guns.
Thank you for the question. Please, I think Ms. Shedd, did I reverse that? I apologize. Senator, it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you. So when you see things like this, and I know it's kind of a new topic now, but I think hundreds of thousands of these blueprints were downloaded, years ago as well. So it's just starting to become one of those new issues. Listen, I think there's still components of a firearm, the barrel and others part, that still need to be metal. I've never seen a successfully fired plastic gun yet. So what I would advocate is, if and when technology ever does get to the point where you can actually replicate a fully firing gun, especially if you live in a state, for some reason, if your firearms are, they're harder to get, I think at some point in time, that local jurisdiction can take a look at it. For Arizona, we pride ourselves, we're #1 in the nation in our Second Amendment rights. And I'm proud of that. Matter of fact, I helped get us there because of the legislation I've written and championed in Arizona. And that's why I'm A+ rated by the NRA. And that's why Gun Owners of America, the #1, no compromise, 1.5 million members across this country, endorse me. So the last thing you want to do is start tweaking. I understand the concern though, so with technology, you want to make sure that people can't overtly just break the law. It's the same thing if they made a machine gun out of it. Why? Machine guns, while they're not illegal, are basically, for the most part, it's a very hard process to get them. So if somebody were to start making things like that that are virtually hard to get or illegal, you could address that, but I think we'd have to watch the technology a little bit quicker. I'm not looking to do anything to make sure that we strip away any of our Second Amendment rights. Thank you. Thank you,
Senator.
Well, one thing about the plastic gun technology is the printer, in order to print this thing, is about $100,000 right now. Yes, it is. Well,
let's remember our rule #1, be respectful. It's okay.
And the other thing is to my knowledge, you can bring other plastic weapons. There are other plastic weapons in the world. There's explosive, etc. But I think more importantly is, I am a strong advocate of the Second Amendment, and I do not believe that 99% of our population should lose their Second Amendment rights because of the activities of a few bad actors. When this becomes something that it starts to be mainstream enough, we will put security in for airports and everywhere else, just like we've already done. But, and I think that when we have a Second Amendment, we also have a responsibility with that Second Amendment. And that responsibility doesn't come from the government. That responsibility is my responsibility, and it's every single one of your responsibilities. And I take that responsibility so seriously that 13 years ago, my husband and I donated 160 acres of our farmland to build a youth shooting sports facility. We have taught hundreds of kids how to shoot. I'm an NRA certified shotgun instructor and a 4-H certified pistol instructor. And I can tell you that, you know, it's one thing to see guns in video games and on television, but we have a duty to teach the next generation, the people around us, how to handle firearms safely. And it's also a lot of fun if anybody wants to join a youth shooting program, because what happens is we have a lot of people who may be pro Second Amendment or don't really dislike guns, but don't know how to become a shooter or whatnot. And this is a very gentle way. We have all our coaches are certified. And what you see is super cool for families because it's not even about the shooting sports anymore. The child learns, then the next thing the parents become coaches, then you have grandma and grandpa out, and it becomes something that an entire family can do together. And so I am completely for defending the Second Amendment, and I will never ruin or get rid of constitutional rights for the majority because of a few bad actors, whether that's the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Third, Fourth, go on down. So there's my position.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We've come to the end of our time with these candidates, and so I want to make sure that we stay on schedule. Also want to thank the audience for their questions. If you didn't get a chance to ask the question you wanted, remember there will be additional folks up here. In fact, in just a few minutes, we'll have our Senate candidates up here. But before we move to that, I'd like to offer each of you the opportunity to make a closing statement or closing remarks. We'll give you 90 seconds for that, and I believe we'll do the opposite. And I believe, Ms. Shedd, you went this last time, so would you go first this time, and then we'll end with Senator Smith.
Well, thank you all for your participation in this great process we have in a republic called an election. And I am going to ask you for your faith and your vote because the reason I'm running is to defend our home, to make sure that the next 100 years of Arizona is even greater than the last 100 years, to make sure that we're stewards of our natural resources, that we have water projects, that we have energy projects, that we have the local federal issues that are so rampant in this district are working for rural Arizonans, that we have a chance. This is a district of producers. With our mining, our timber, our agriculture, we make literally money out of dirt, water, and sunshine. This is the biggest production district, I would say, in the United States. And I want to ensure that we keep that work ethic. We keep that small town atmosphere where you're accountable because you know your neighbors and you look them in the eye. And we really need to bring rural Arizona to DC and push DC out of rural Arizona. And so I hope that, to earn your vote, I'm a Republican, I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, less taxes, less regulation, and the regulations are strangling so many of our people that those really need to be addressed, and they're so different in rural Arizona than they are in Maine or Virginia because of our climate that we need someone who understands them to advocate for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd. Appreciate it. Senator.
Well, thank you again, everybody. You know, like I said before, I live here, so it's so nice. It seems like every day we're in a different county, so it's nice to be home and nice to see familiar faces. But here's what I always tell everybody, especially this time of year, because I'm sure when you go home today in your mailbox, you're going to get a bunch of poem cards and a bunch of flyers. And when you turn on your radio or your TV station, you see a bunch of advertisements come up. Vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. And if you're anything like me, you're going to look at your ballot and go, who in the heck do I vote for? Because everybody's kind of saying the same thing. And my advice, certainly that I've always given myself, that I'd give you as well, is I would vote for people that you know have actually done the work that you want done. There's a really big difference between talkers and doers, yeah? And I meet a lot of talkers all the time. Well, I want to go do this, and I'm going to go do that, and if you just put me there, and I'm going to, yeah, they don't do it. Because of my record, not my words, because of my record in serving you in the Senate, in this city, in this district, again, I've been ranked at the top of every scorecard, business, military, police, whatever it is, for the work that I've done. I'm ranked the #1 conservative legislator in Arizona. President Trump's team all endorse me. People like Ted Cruz and congressmen and women throughout the country. I'm the only candidate in the country that's in a primary right now endorsed by the United States Border Patrol and the 15,000 plus agents that defend our border. You know why? Because they know I'm a doer. They know I don't just give lip service. They know I actually do what I say I'm going to do. And especially in towns like ours and cities like ours where we live, You need doers. And especially in Congress. Because Lord knows we got enough weak-kneed, spineless people down there. I want to go there, support the agenda that American people have voted for. I want to go do the work that I've continued on in Arizona, magnified on a bigger level. And I want to go do there to fight for the principles of God, family, and country. Thank you so much. God bless you. Please vote for Steve Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them both a big round of applause. Appreciate it.